A respected woman is publicly shamed and detained for a crime she never committed. Her dignity questioned in front of dozens of silent witnesses. Security guard Ray Murdoch's biased suspicion turns a routine shopping trip into an ordeal that stirs anger in everyone watching. But Evelyn Carter carries something no one expects, a quiet authority and an ally ready to reveal the truth. You won't believe how this confrontation flips the script, leading to a moment when justice finally comes full circle. A respected woman is publicly shamed and detained for a crime she never committed, her dignity questioned in front of dozens of silent witnesses. Security guard Ray Murdoch's biased suspicion turns a routine shopping trip into an ordeal that stirs anger in everyone watching. But Evelyn Carter carries something no one expects, a quiet authority and an ally ready to reveal the truth. You won't believe how this confrontation flips the script, leading to a moment when justice finally comes full circle. Evelyn Carter entered the sprawling supermarket on a Saturday evening, her steps measured, her gaze steady. She wore worn jeans, a faded blue shirt, and sneakers that had seen years of service on city streets. In her hands, a reusable canvas bag, soft from age, swung at her side. Every detail seemed ordinary. She could have been anyone in this place, blending into the fabric of everyday life. The market was alive with the subtle rhythm of a weekend rush. Cartwheels rattled along the linoleum, voices rose and fell in a gentle wave, and the speaker system filled the aisles with mellow instrumental music. Evelyn moved quietly among other shoppers, a young boy pleading for cereal, an elderly man selecting apples, two friends laughing as they compared labels. She paused before the produce section, weighing the cost and ripeness of tomatoes, then moved on to yogurt, then bread, ticking items from her list with calm precision. Near the front, behind a waist-high counter, stood store security. Josh Kent, still learning how to read people, wore his uniform stiffly, glancing between receipts and faces. He caught sight of Evelyn and hesitated. There was nothing suspicious about her presence, yet his nerves made him extra alert. Beside him, Ray Murdoch didn't hesitate at all. Ray's stance was relaxed, but his eyes were sharp, his gaze scanning for discomfort or missteps. He had worked security in stores like this for nearly 2 decades, and suspicion had settled into his bones. From the citrus aisle, Evelyn heard the soft crackle of a radio and recognized the security code spoken quietly. She didn't react, the habit of restraint embedded since her academy days. She picked out a few oranges, her fingers gentle as she examined the skin for bruises, and moved on. She sensed eyes following her, the subtle tension of being noticed but not greeted. At the checkout lane, Evelyn set her items on the conveyor belt with practiced care. The cashier, a teenager with a nervous smile, scanned everything, double-bagged the eggs at Evelyn's quiet request. Their short conversation felt polite but distant. Neither lingered, both eager to be on their way. She paid, thanked the cashier, and headed toward the broad glass doors that led outside. That was when Ray stepped forward. He angled his body just enough to block her path without outright confrontation. The gesture was familiar to him, almost casual, a method for halting someone without accusation. He looked at Evelyn and gave a curt nod. His voice meant to sound routine, but carrying an edge. "Excuse me, ma'am, could I see your bag for a moment?" The words landed softly, but the air changed. Shoppers within earshot paused. Some glanced over their shoulders. Others craned necks discreetly, alert to even the smallest hint of drama in a place where monotony was the norm. Phones came out, a few subtle, a few brazen, screens poised to capture whatever came next. Evelyn's heart thudded, though her face remained composed. She heard the murmur ripple through the bystanders' words about store policy, about "it's always something." She met Ray's gaze, calm but unwavering. "Is something wrong?" Ray kept his tone even. "We just need a quick look. There's been a report about possible unpaid items." Josh watched, shifting from foot to foot, his confidence wilting. He recognized the tension building but felt powerless to intervene. Social pressure and the presence of his senior kept him silent, eyes flicking back and forth between his partner and the woman before him. Without a word, Evelyn placed her bag on the counter. She opened it wide, fingers steady, and began removing her belongings one by one. Yogurt, tomatoes, oranges, a loaf of bread, a bottle of water, her old leather wallet, a set of keys on a faded Atlanta PD keychain. Each item was placed in a tidy line. Ray rummaged through the bag, glancing at receipts, feeling for hidden pockets, everything about his movements matter-of-fact, bordering on dismissive. With each motion, the ambient noise in the store seemed to quiet further, the crowd's focus sharpening to a needlepoint. "She's got nothing in there," someone in the crowd muttered, just loud enough to be heard. A mother pulled her child closer, whispering in his ear. A teenage girl holding her phone aloft spoke quietly as she recorded, her voice low but incredulous. "I can't believe they're doing this." Still, Ray moved through his routine. When finally he found nothing untoward, he straightened up with an indifferent shrug. "Looks like you're all good. Thanks for your cooperation." Not a word of apology, no acknowledgement of the silent spectacle that had grown behind her. Evelyn looked at Ray for a moment longer, her eyes hard as polished stone, then began putting her things back in the bag, slow and deliberate. Josh's hands shook as he handed her a receipt that wasn't hers, as if searching for something to do. Evelyn took it, gently returning it to him. She nodded to them both, holding herself with quiet dignity, and stepped toward the doors as they slid open before her. Behind her, the tension in the store released all at once. Conversations restarted in hushed tones, and a ripple of discomfort lingered, heavy as humidity, after a summer rain. Some shoppers, especially those who had watched closely, were left unsettled, wondering if the line between authority and suspicion had been crossed too easily. Evelyn crossed the parking lot in silence. The sky had dimmed, the sunset turning the asphalt gold and violet. She paused by her car, taking a steadying breath, her hands resting on the roof for a moment before she stowed her groceries. The injustice of the moment echoed in her thoughts, but she let only a single sigh escape. Inside the supermarket, the scent of suspicion lingered, a day that should have been ordinary changed by the weight of an unnecessary doubt. Unspoken questions hung in the air, questions about fairness, about respect, about who gets to move through the world without fear of being stopped. And for those who watched, the memory of those uneasy moments would not easily fade. Evelyn returned home that evening carrying an invisible heaviness alongside her groceries. Her apartment, usually a space of calm and comfort, felt quieter than usual. She placed each item on the kitchen counter with meticulous care and tried to let the routine soothe her thoughts. But the echo of the supermarket, the silent crowd, the inspecting hands, the tension, lived on in the corners of her mind. Night descended and the day's events replayed themselves from every angle. She thought about the look in Ray's eyes, the unyielding certainty, the quick judgment. She saw again the way Josh's hands trembled, how he seemed torn between duty and discomfort. Evelyn, who had seen much in her career, recognized these signals. Ray's suspicion was not just about products or policy, but about power, routine, perhaps even old resentments unspoken. Josh's hesitation was inexperience confronted by a moment that felt wrong, but impossible to challenge openly. Across town, the scene lingered in the minds of those who witnessed it. Some replayed videos taken on their phones, voice to voice as they discussed what had happened. The mother who pulled her child close to her in the store thought deeply about what the moment had meant, not just for Evelyn, but for anyone who might be judged before being heard. The teenage girl who filmed the ordeal uploaded her video online, the caption reading, "This happened at our store today. Does this seem right?" Ray, for his part, pushed away any doubt. For years he had trusted his instincts. They had never failed him before, and he saw his actions as nothing more than good security. Still, a small flicker of unease grew in the back of his mind as he remembered the unwavering look Evelyn gave him. He told himself it was standard procedure, but something about it felt different. Josh, back in the break room, sat in silence. He thought about how he had been taught to observe, to act when necessary, but wondered if he could have done more. Reliving the scene, he heard Evelyn's calm, low voice and the murmur of the crowd. He wondered whether following orders was enough, or if sometimes the right thing meant speaking up. That night, Evelyn sat by her living room window, staring out at the city lights. She opened an old wooden box on her table, revealing her police badge and service commendations. Her hands lingered on the badge, a reminder of who she was and the values she still carried. She did not seek conflict, but she knew the importance of standing her ground. The events at the supermarket were not just a stain on her day, but a moment that spoke to something larger, something shared by many. Beyond her apartment, the story was already moving. The video gained attention online. Comments poured in, some standing in solidarity, others defending the routine. Television stations received tips. The everyday injustice Evelyn endured was now being discussed by strangers, debated and dissected, spreading on social media and group chats. People who had never met her now saw her as a symbol. For some, a story of resilience. For others, a reminder of how perceptions and power can collide in the most ordinary places. All the while, Evelyn prepared herself for whatever would come next, bracing for the possibility that her day, which began so unremarkably, might change more than just herself. In the quiet, she resolved, dignity would be her answer, and the quiet strength she had always carried would be her shield. By sunrise, Evelyn's world had begun to shift. The video recorded inside the supermarket had already spread far beyond the store's walls, gathering momentum on countless screens. Comments multiplied beneath the original post, stories appeared on neighborhood forums, and local journalists reached out for statements. Faces she had never seen carried pieces of her story into conversations over morning coffee and commutes. The video revealed everything, the silent tension, the crowd's hushed curiosity, the way Evelyn stood quietly as her bag was inspected, and the matter-of-fact dismissal from Ray when nothing was found. It was a snapshot of an ordinary day, overturned by suspicion, and of a woman resolute in her dignity even beneath the weight of someone else's doubt. Within the store, responses took contrasting forms. Management initially responded with brief, impersonal statements. "We take all customer concerns seriously. The event is under review." Some employees said nothing, but exchanged glances in the break room, unease flickering in their eyes. Others, seeing the story go public, found it harder to focus on daily routines, wondering if they themselves might become witnesses to something similar again. Ray watched the storm unfold with disbelief, stubbornly holding fast to his conviction that he had just followed procedure. Older friends and co-workers called, defending his choices, or, in quieter moments, asking if it really had to go that way. He spent hours rewatching the video, searching for justification in the grainy footage, telling himself he had acted in the store's best interest. Yet each time his eyes met the captured calm of Evelyn's, something unsettled moved inside him, a realization that the incident had already become larger than protocol. For Josh, the attention was overwhelming. He replayed the event again and again in his mind. Guilt gnawed at him, not for simply following orders, but for staying silent when his instincts told him something was wrong. All night he watched the video, reading comment after comment, some outraged, others in disbelief. Strangers online praised Evelyn's composure, questioned the store's motives, and called for accountability. Josh wondered if speaking out might change anything, or if it would only cost him his job. Outside the supermarket's orbit, the story continued to grow. Calls arrived at Evelyn's phone from local journalists, activists, and even former colleagues who recognized her name from public records. People left messages on her doorstep, some handwritten notes of encouragement, others quietly offering support or legal advice. Children from her building drew pictures of smiles and handed them to her in the hallway. Even at a distance, the neighborhood became a collective witness, its empathy both comforting and overwhelming. Evelyn read every note, each message reinforcing her sense that this was not just about one incident. She recalled her own days in uniform hours, devoted to de-escalating situations, training new recruits to judge with care, not haste. That sense of purpose returned with new urgency. Yet she also knew the risk involved. Stepping into the public eye could ignite further controversy, misunderstanding, or even resentment from those unwilling to see the nuance, from those clinging to simple narratives of right and wrong. Soon Josh found the courage to reach out. He knocked on Evelyn's door late in the afternoon, nerves evident in his posture. When Evelyn answered, he apologized before words even fully formed. His confession told of doubts building up during and after the incident, that his discomfort was not with the policy, but with how quickly suspicion had turned personal and public. Sitting across from Evelyn at her kitchen table, he shared that Ray had a history of targeting specific shoppers, that management brushed off his concerns, and that some staff muttered uneasily about patterns they had seen but never challenged. Josh wondered aloud if the truth would make a difference, his uncertainty mirroring that of the many who had watched the story unfold from afar. Evelyn listened quietly, never interrupting. When he finished, she spoke softly, reminding him that doing the right thing was rarely simple, that courage could prove contagious, and that change started with acknowledgement. Her words were neither bitter nor triumphant, but calm and steady, imbued with a wisdom carved from years of experience. With Josh's willingness to testify, the tide slowly turned. The supermarket launched an internal investigation, and external organizations joined calls for transparency. Stories now ran not just about Evelyn's experience, but about the broader need for respect and accountability in places meant to serve everyone equally. The city buzzed with debate. Community leaders spoke out, calling on institutions to revisit their training, to listen more closely to the voices of those affected by bias or hasty judgment. Neighbors discussed the value of dignity and clarity in small, everyday encounters. The incident had sparked something far greater than itself, a movement towards seeing one another more openly, more honestly, even when it meant asking uncomfortable questions. Through it all, Evelyn moved with the same resolve, refusing either to shrink from attention or to let it define her. She reminded herself day by day that her story was both unique and shared, that her dignity might, for a moment, help others carry their own. In the ripples left by a simple, unnecessary confrontation, the beginnings of change could be felt, fragile but insistent, growing in the hearts and conversations of all who now witnessed her quiet strength. In the days that followed the investigation, the atmosphere in the city shifted. Evelyn found herself at the center of conversations not only in the news cycle, but within community meetings, classrooms, and across kitchen tables. The attention was at times overwhelming, yet she moved through it with the same quiet dignity she displayed from the beginning. Her story resonated as a turning point, proof that even a single moment of resolve in the face of adversity could spark broader reflection and demand real change. The supermarket management, faced with mounting public pressure and the clear testimony provided by Josh, initiated formal reviews of their policies. Local officials made public statements promising reform, and training seminars on respect and fairness circulated through retail companies citywide. The staff, once quiet and uncertain, now discussed openly the ways in which their daily roles shaped experiences for every customer. Many acknowledged that what seemed like small decisions or routine checks could carry far deeper consequences than they ever imagined. Ray, after internal review, was removed from his position. For the first time in years, he confronted the impact of his actions not just on the people he monitored, but on the trust and sense of safety every customer expected. While some of his colleagues defended him quietly, others reflected on their own approaches, seeing in Ray's story a cautionary lesson. Josh, though nervous about his future at first, discovered a sense of relief. He had chosen to step forward at a difficult moment and witnessed the positive change that honesty and integrity could bring. For Evelyn, the resolution was never about victory over others, but about restoring the sense of fairness and respect that should shape every public place. She returned once more to the supermarket, not as a symbol, but as herself. Staff greeted her differently, with a warmth and sincerity that hadn't been present before. One young cashier offered a shy smile and handed her the receipt with care. There was an unspoken understanding in their exchange, a mutual recognition of how much had changed and how much further there was to go. Evelyn was invited to speak at a local community forum. She stood before an attentive audience, some holding notepads, others simply watching, hoping for reassurance. She spoke gently, choosing her words with precision and empathy. Evelyn shared her conviction that respect and courage were not just words, but habits, choices to be repeated every day, in every encounter. She encouraged others to speak out when faced with wrongs, and to support those who do so with kindness instead of division. As her remarks ended, applause filled the hall, not raucous but sustained, resonant with quiet admiration. Children waved at her from the first row, and a teacher mentioned that her story had become the topic of classroom discussions on fairness and belonging. Evelyn smiled, feeling the depth of connection that had grown from a single, difficult experience. Returning home that evening, she placed her badge, now a symbol of more than just service back, in its wooden box. She sat by her window, city lights twinkling in the dusk, and allowed herself a moment of peaceful reflection. In that stillness, Evelyn affirmed that even when the world seemed divided, the acts of truth, courage, and compassion could draw people together. She had faced suspicion and discomfort, but through unwavering dignity had helped inspire the possibility of a kinder, more just community for all.